Non-Monogamy Help is a podcast where your questions about open, non-monogamous or polyamorous relationships are answered. Our host, Lola Phoenix, will consult a licensed therapist with over a decade of experience to address your problems. Names and locations have been changed or censored to keep your questions anonymous. You're listening to Non-Monogamy Help, the podcast.
Hello and welcome to episode 22 of Non-Monogamy Help. I'm Lola Phoenix. Please send your questions to nonmonogamyhelp@gmail.com and they'll be read in the podcast or the column anonymously. If you want to read the columns and listen to the podcast, you can go to nonmonogamyhelp.com. If you want to subscribe to the newsletter, you can go to tinyletter.com/nonmonogamyhelp. And if you want to follow us on Twitter, it's at Non-Monogamy Help. If you want to be amazing and support the podcasts and the columns, please become a patron by going to patreon.com/Lola Phoenix. Awesome. So I'm going to apologize first and foremost for right now. I have a pretty sad and intense sore throat going on, so I am a bit not so great, but I'm going to go ahead and give you the discussion question for this week that you can share with a partner or a friend if you're interested. So the discussion question this week is: list 5 ways in which you are, after all, quite difficult to live with. And as I do usually, I'm going to answer it as quick fire as I can so as not to delay you from listening to this week's letter. Apologies for the siren. So let's see, 5 ways that I'm quite difficult to live with. I think that I can be quite particular about who gets to come into my sleeping space, and I am that way for a lot of complicated trauma-related reasons, so I don't tend to like people being in my sleeping space, even if it's just a hangout. I can be quite weird about that. I think that I'm also I'm not really a neat freak, but I do kind of like things to be a bit clean, so I can end up being the one who nags somebody else to clean up a bit more. I think that even though I am a little bit of a clean freak, I also kind of have my designated mess, which could be annoying to somebody else who really, really wants to have everything clean more than I do. And I think in general, I'm quite flexible. I don't know if there's another way that I'm difficult to live with. I think I try to be quite flexible for different people because I've lived in so many different situations. So I haven't really had the ability to be annoying about it. So yeah, but I think those things are probably things that I'll probably clash with people. I do kind of have things. I think everyone has like little things that they like a certain way that annoy them. Like one of mine is I really hate it when people leave dishes inside the sink and make it impossible for me to clean my dishes, but isn't really that big of a deal. But over time it can kind of grate on you. So yeah, that is the discussion question this week. I will repeat it again if you would like to introduce it to friends, partners, etc. List 5 ways in which you are, after all, quite difficult to live with. Great. Awesome. Now I'm going to stop talking and get on to this week's letter. We have been married 24 years, both of us over 50, and I am 1.5 years post-breast cancer treatment. We both had cheating spouses the first time around, and when I met hubby, he was a total player. He was 22, 5 years younger, and way more experienced than me. He is very high energy. He's a sexual machine, really. Bipolar, and sees sex as a physical act, not an emotional one. He recently said he had his one love in life, and she killed whatever he had in him that could love because she betrayed him and abused their son. After having no physical contact during chemo, which totally sucked, he now says, "I am afraid to hurt you." He is a very big, strong guy, and "I love you, but I'm not in love with you." Because he had the fantasy of a threesome, I gave in years ago one time and granted it, even though I didn't want it, because I loved him and wanted him to be happy and thought it might get it out of his system. It didn't. I didn't have contact with her during it, and we never saw her again. Now he wants a permanent live-in extra female to have threesomes with, but he doesn't want to share me with anyone except the other female. He has this whole "you're mine, I don't share" thing going on. Not that I want to wander, but it's disturbing that he thinks it's okay for him and not me. He has also mentioned the possibility of adding more women later because he feels he could quote-unquote handle multiple women. Think sister wives all in the same bed. When we met, he juggled multiple women at the same time, but I wasn't aware until we got further into our relationship and were officially dating. I'm not into it. I'm monogamous and have never been anything but, and never cheated on anyone, even when just dating someone, even when I was in the Navy and we were not married yet. I can count the guys I've been with on one hand. I'm about to throw in the towel and move on because I feel like this BS you're mine crap is going to have me going back into a psychiatric ward. I have major depressive disorder, PTSD, anxiety, panic attacks, the whole thing. I am seeing a counselor, as is he, both through the VA. We're both disabled veterans who do not work. After going through cancer treatments, now I am on hormone suppression to curtail a recurrence of cancer, and that makes me horny all the time. You'd think he would like that, right? Wrong. He complains. Yeah, I get that I'm not a supermodel, but he's at least 100 pounds overweight, and it doesn't make me want him any less. I love him, have been in love with him forever, but if he's incapable of loving me back the way I love him, I don't think I can handle the kind of betrayal that would feel like. I'd rather cut my losses and be single until I die. I feel like he married me so I would take care of my stepson. I feel like he is planning on using an extra woman as a preparation for me dying of cancer, and that I am now a burden even though I've grown my hair back and can take care of myself. I'm also afraid that he may be unwilling to let me go, regardless, because we have a lot of financial obligations, and I would leave him with all of them because I am not materialistic, and I can move on into an apartment or a 55-plus community in the city and wouldn't need a car. Yes, I've been thinking about what ifs. He has forced me to prepare myself for the worst by pushing me towards things I don't want. I left an abusive man I was married to who cheated on me with numerous people constantly. In that instance, I packed a bag and walked out, what I could carry after 6 years of being duped into believing my husband was faithful. His best friends told on him after they discovered that I was faithful and that he was the only one treating our marriage openly. They thought it wasn't fair to me because I was innocent and did everything right. I didn't date for a long time afterwards. We had no children because he caused miscarriages and eventually was the reason why I had a total hysterectomy at 25. Sorry, part of why I'm disabled is cognitive issues, memory problems, and concentration issues, so I talk in circles and write in them. Yeah, I'm fucked up. I know it. I didn't cause it or deserved it, but I'm used to it. I can still make to-do lists and follow them. My bills get paid, and I take care of responsibilities and have intelligent conversations. I just get a little lost in them as if I was on cold medicine. I still mow the lawn, putter about with my houseplants, play with the dog, and for the most part act and appear normal, if with a dirty sense of humor. So nutshell here, what the actual fuck? And how do I deal with this crap? I know I am strong enough to move on if I have to. I've been there before. I know how to survive, but I would rather save what we have if it can be saved to our mutual benefit. If not, then I will bear the pain and move on knowing I did my best to figure out an amicable way to work it out. So there's so much going on here. First, I just want to say I'm sorry because, like, this really sucks. Like, you've gone through cancer treatment and the treatment that you're getting right now is really aberrant. Like, it's absolutely unacceptable. There are a lot of really bizarre and just red flags. There's a whole marquee of red going on through this entire thing. First and foremost, like, you know, if you're monogamous and you don't want to be polyamorous, that is absolutely 100% fine. I don't think you need me to tell you that. I think you're quite self-assured in who you are, and I think that's great. The biggest things that just sort of hit me off the bat is that you say that he said he had his one love in life and she killed whatever he had in him that could love. That is a very, very horrible thing to say. And also, just what I feel is, and I'm not a therapist, but, and I'm not an expert in abuse, but I have had experiences with people who kind of set things up in a way where they can say, well, I told you that I was terrible, or I told you, as if that you are to blame. So this feels very much to me like, you know, sometimes people who are quite terrible will give you these little warnings. And then they can turn around and say, oh, but I warned you that I'm this way. So what? Like it makes it acceptable for them to be that way. He tells you and has told you multiple times that he's not in love with you. You know, how can he say that whoever this is killed whatever he had in him that could love? That's such a disgusting thing to say. people have been through, and I'm not trying to minimize what he's been through. He may have been through a very, very terrible relationship, and it's one thing to say, like, look, I've been through a very, very terrible, difficult relationship. It's really hard for me to trust. It's really hard for me to be vulnerable. It's really hard for me to be intimate with people. Apologize for the siren. It's another thing to say that you can't love anyone else anymore. And it's such utter horseshit. Like, with all due respect to him, it is utter horseshit. There have been people who have been through incredible amounts of trauma and still managed to love people. So it's just patent bullshit. And it's one of those things that's just like a huge red flag. It just sounds like something that he can go back to later and say, well, I said that I can't love anyone, which is horseshit. He can love people. He can. And that's no excuse for his behavior. The other thing that I'm kind of picking up on, and you haven't explicitly said this, you haven't explicitly said that he's criticized your appearance, but you talk a little bit about your appearance in here. You talk about how, you talk about how he basically wants to have this because he wants to have more sex, yet you are not, you're not disinterested in sex. And then you sort of talk about how, you've grown out your hair back and you can take care of yourself. You had cancer. Like, the whole point, and well, not the whole point, but like a big part of a partnership is supporting someone else. And I don't know whether this is your talk to yourself, making you think that, that you were a burden for having cancer and probably needing some help and support from him, which I hope he provided. But you're not a burden at any point. Even if you get, your cancer comes back and you do have to go through chemo again and your hair starts falling out again, you still shouldn't be a burden to somebody. And because you mentioned like your hair growing back and like that you're not a supermodel and that he complains, it makes me wonder, is he complaining about your appearance? Because that's really not cool. Like, there's one thing, I think that people who are together, especially in a monogamous situation, you can give feedback. Like, if I have a partner and their breath stinks, I'm going to tell them their breath stinks. But there's a difference between, something like that and what sounds like some criticism of your appearance, which is just, it crosses the line into abuse. Like the reason why abusive people will sort of pick. It's picking at your self-worth and your self-esteem. And the good thing is that from your letter, I get the sense that isn't really working on you. I mean, you do kind of down-talk yourself a little bit in this, which I'll talk about later, but you do overall seem confident. But that's the sort of thing that sort of chips away and gets at your confidence and undermines you, and is just really a terrible thing to do. So that's not cool either. That's another big red flag. The other thing is that, like, you, at the end of this letter, you talk about you want to see if what you have can be saved for your mutual benefit. And yet, throughout this entire situation, not only are you getting the feeling that he is not interested in mutual benefit, but he's making that patently obvious. Now, there's a thing within polyamory that people refer to as the one penis policy, which is when exactly this kind of situation when and this is usually cis people that we're talking about. I'm not saying that trans people can't have a one genital policy, but usually it's referring to a situation with a cisgender woman and a cisgender man, and where the man is okay with a cisgender woman basically sleeping with only women but no men. So he's owning you. He has this "you're mine, I don't share," but not with other women. Not that it would be better if he didn't let you sleep with, or if he wanted to sleep with other people and didn't want you to sleep with any other people. I mean, that's not better, but it is very the problem with this kind of policy, where it's like you're not allowed to have sex with other men but you can have sex with other women, is just really gross. Because not only is it generally transphobic, because generally people who have this kind of policy aren't very open about gender and aren't very understanding, or judge trans people in negative ways, and probably, are just flat out rejecting the fact that non-binary people exist. But this kind of a thing is it's basically saying that women aren't a threat. It's very sexist and outdated and ridiculous. So he's going to let you sleep with his other females, which, by the way, I don't know if that is a word that he used or it's a word that you use. If it's a word he used, again, another red flag here. When people call women females, Female what? He wants a live-in extra female. A female what? So it's a degrading thing to call a woman a female. It's hard for me to like adequately describe it, but it's just very cold, and it's objectifying. He's objectifying these women. He's objectifying you, and he thinks he can handle multiple women, and yet here you are wanting to sleep with him, and he's complaining about that, and he's complaining about your appearance. Here you are, like, trying your best, and he's not putting up any effort. He can't even handle the person that he's in a relationship with, let alone multiple people, because he's being incredibly selfish and sexist here. It's absolutely unacceptable. Like, there are people who choose to live in this kind of situation where there's one guy and a bunch of women. If that's how everyone in this situation is choosing to live, I still think it's not okay to basically act like women aren't a threat, or to basically create this kind of system when it's based on these ideas that men can handle multiple women. Even that word handle, like, it's just gross. It's just gross. It's horrible. It's a massive red flag that he doesn't have any respect, not only for you, but for these women. It would be a totally different thing if he had come to you and he had said, I'm struggling a bit with, my libido, and, the fact that you've had cancer has been really stressful on me. It's okay that he's scared of hurting you. Like, that's legit. And if he would, like, if there was some way I could kind of do something sexual with somebody else to kind of let off steam, that would be one thing. This is not that thing. There might be very understandable things going on or underneath all of these layers of terrible, but there's still a lot of layers of terrible. And the other thing is that you need, you've got an intuition here. I mean, you need to look at what you've written. The saddest thing that you've said in this letter is, I feel like he married me so I would take care of my stepson, so his child, I assume. I feel like he is planning on using an extra woman as a preparation for me dying of cancer. So he's trying to figure out, like, basically have a backup wife. And that's really horrible. Like, dealing with death is quite difficult, and it's quite a hard subject for a lot of people to talk about. It's a very taboo subject. This is like a whole other thing in terms of the taboo nature of death that I could talk about for hours, but I won't get into it. But the point is that, like, it's okay for him to be scared of that. But if he wants to make sure he's not, alone, there are better ways of doing it. I think maybe underneath all this, there are some understandable feelings, but what he's doing is displaying an incredible lack of respect for you, an incredible lack of respect for what you have together. And so when you talk about if it can be saved for your mutual benefit, it doesn't exist in your mutual benefit right now. He isn't helping you out right now. You've gone through so much, like, you've survived cancer, and, what has he done? Like, you don't write it about how he supported you. I really hope that he did support you, but now he's complaining, and now he wants, essentially a backup bunch of women who he can also lean on, that can help, support him and do whatever he wants to do. He is not showing how scary it must be for you to have faced this. How scary must it be to have this threat that hanging over your head? You do seem very self-assured, but just because someone seems self-assured doesn't mean they don't need support. And there's nothing that he's doing that is demonstrating that he respects the enormity of the situation in front of you. He's not even showing that. So how can you create a mutual benefit situation where someone is clearly not invested in you, and an amicable way to work it out? So this is the last thing, and this is the last big red flag, and the thing that I'm really worried about. And I might be taking what you said off on a tangent, and that's fine, but the fact that you said, I'm afraid he may be unwilling to let me go. He has to, because you're a grown-ass adult. It doesn't seem like you have any qualms about leaving, but I don't know what you meant by, I'm afraid he may be unwilling to let me go. And you talk about trying to find an amicable way. I mean, are you afraid of him? Are you really worried that that something might happen to you, if that he might hurt you if you leave. If you are worried about that, part of the battle with people in abusive relationships is them, I think the statistic or something is like it takes like 4 to 7, or I can't remember what the number is, an average amount of attempts for someone who is in an abusive relationship to leave that person. And some of it has to do with, the fact that it's very hard to break the cycle, and because of the kind of manipulation that abusers do. And it seems like he has manipulated you a bit, but it doesn't seem like you are, you say, I'm strong enough to move on if I have to. And it seems like you have that confidence to sort of go, you know what, I'm done with this. And you've got the right vigor. Like, you're sitting here going, what the actual fuck? How do I deal with this crap? You don't. That's the answer. You don't deal with this crap because you deserve 100% better. And, if you are scared of him, or if you think that he might physically prevent you from leaving, then you do your best to make arrangements, talk to a domestic abuse shelter, and they should have programs that help people get, physically escape situations if that's what you're really worried about. But, you seem like you're able to take care of yourself in terms of living on your own. It really sucks. This is such a terrible situation for you to be in, and I can't even express like how sad I am for you in this situation. Like, you don't seem to be the kind of person, I could be wrong, but you don't seem to be the kind of person that would necessarily want anyone to feel sorry for them. But you've just gone through so much, and I think the least of what you deserve is someone who respects that, and someone who respects you, and someone who is willing to give you the support you need. The last thing you need right now, after you've just survived through a bunch of chemo treatments and dealt with all of that stress, the last thing you need is someone going, oh yeah, I want to have a bunch of women, and you can sleep with them, but you can't sleep with anyone else, and yeah, I think I could have multiple women because I think I could handle them. It's just patently fucking ridiculous. Like, I'm so sorry you're in this situation, because it's so ridiculous, and you deserve so much better. But yeah, I just yeah. I really hate sometimes having to give this advice, because I think, I usually, for most situations, unless they're of a direct threat to someone, I try to see if there can be ways to solve it, because there are some times when people just they don't have inherent incompatibilities, but they have just disagreements, and sometimes there are ways to solve them. There are probably people out there that exist in a very similar scenario to this, where their partner has multiple partners, and you seem like the kind of person where if he had approached you and said that he wanted to have multiple partners but didn't place any restrictions on you, you might have even gone with that. Maybe, even though you're monogamous, or you might have considered the possibility, but your spider senses are tingling for a reason. Like, this whole ownership of you is unacceptable, and yeah, you can't work. You can only work. And this is one of the reasons why I tell people constantly that relationships aren't skills, and that you don't fail relationships, because it takes the people within that relationship working together, and you can't work with someone who refuses to work with you. You can't build anything amicable or build to a mutual benefit with someone who clearly does not have your best needs at heart or cares about your benefit. I mean, he just, like, there's so many things here that just say he doesn't care. It's a complete side note. I know I'm trying to come to a close, but, like, let's just examine the cognitive dissonance within his statements. He's saying he's lost his ability to love because his ex-wife, stole that from him or whatnot. And then he's also saying that he can handle multiple women. I mean, maybe he means just sexually, but, like, these live-in wives, are they not going to be loved? Is he just going to have multiple females in his abode that he doesn't love? I mean, this is ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and you deserve so much better than this. And I wish that I had, if he had come at you trying to explore polyamory clumsily, if he had come at you and said, I'm interested in extra, or even extra female, like it's like an extra, like what? Like it's like the person's a side order of fries? Like, oh gosh. If he had come to you with a request to open up your relationship so that he could meet some of his sexual needs without the complaining about your appearance, without he can't love anybody anymore, without the instinct you have that he's trying to find a backup wife, it would have been one thing. You could have maybe worked that to your mutual benefit, but he is showing you who he is. and I just don't think that you should put up with it. I'm really sorry that there isn't anything better I can say, but, you know, what you've done so far, like, you've come so far, and you've done some amazing things. Like, you've survived so much. Like, the relationship you described with your the abusive man you were with, absolutely freaking horrible. And you've survived through a lot, and you just deserve, especially after you survived abusive people, you survived cancer, like, after all that, you really deserve to have somebody in your life who respects you, and who cares about you, and who cares about, you know, your needs and your life, and just, you can do better. I really genuinely think so. You know, it's never too late. But yeah, that's my advice for this, and I really, really hope it helps. And good luck. Thank you so much for listening to episode 22 of Non-Monogamy Help. I deeply, deeply apologize if you heard some background noise. I am recording this in my flat, as I always say, so there's sirens and flatmate noise, lots of other things. Just as a reminder, I'd really, really love for you to subscribe to the podcast and the column. You can subscribe to the podcast through wherever you get your podcasts, usually. There's also an RSS feed. You can find that at the Twitter account at Non-Monogamy Help. That's the username, and there's a pinned post where you can find, if not, you can find it on the Libsyn site, so you should be able to find where to subscribe to the podcast. But you can also subscribe on medium.com/non-monogamy-help, and I post the columns and the podcasts there. If you want them in your inbox, you can get them at tinyletter.com/non-monogamy-help. And if you want to be an amazing human, I deeply, deeply support all my patrons. It's really, really helpful for me. It helps me pay for the podcast hosting and all of the other bits for scheduling social media, things that make this so much easier for me. And if you donate $5 actually, it's not £5, but $5 or more a month, your name will be read at the end of the podcast if you give me the consent for that, because I always like to make sure before I just assume. And the patrons that are currently supporting at the $5 level are Laura Boylan, Chris Albury-Jones, Frenzy, and James Wartell. Thank you so much for being amazing patrons, and thank you for listening. And you will get the next podcast in, not a week, in 2 weeks. That's how it works, isn't it? Every other week, that's how it works. Awesome. One day I'll get that right. Cool. Thanks so much. Bye. You've been listening to Non-Monogamy Help. Our podcast music has been provided by Chris Albury-Jones at albury-jones.com, and the art was made by Dom Jung at domduong.com. Thank you for listening.